Welcome to Space Insider, an informational YouTube series teaching you about moon photography with just binoculars and a phone. In today's episode, I will talk about moonlight. Oftentimes when you happen to glance at the moon at night, you might easily come to the conclusion that the moon is a light source of its own due to how bright it looks, especially during a full moon when it is at its brightest. But this is not true at all. The moon only reflects sunlight to us so we can see the moon. As we know, the moon is white, or a very light gray, and white just so happens to be the most reflective color in the universe, and so the moon will appear to glow in the sky no matter the visible phase. Now the only difference is that the specific phase the moon is at also dictates how bright it is. For example, a waxing crescent moon will harbor a very small amount of light because it has so little to reflect onto us. So taking pictures during this phase will be very easy and slight detail can be made out from just binoculars. However, the more light reflected, the harder to see. This happens during a full moon where the sun's light is reflected on 98% of the moon's surface to us. So all we see is a large white circle about the size of the sun from our view that seems to glow, and taking pictures of the moon this way will make it very hard to capture crater detail. You will need a telescope to filter out a full moon, or you can use a moon filter which essentially filters out the moonlight so you can get the craters at any phase. But the best time to go out to photograph the moon is during the first quarter phase of either a waxing or waning moon. This is when the moon has accepted to reflect half of its surface sunlight onto us. There isn't too much light to remove detail and there isn't too little to make the moon invisible. And taken with binoculars, you can make out some great detail of craters. The moonlight so far seems to be a very tricky part of the moon to deal with, but that's not the worst part. The light from the sun reflected onto the moon doesn't only make it harder to get a good photo, it also makes stars and planets in the sky harder to see. This is why during the day you don't see any stars because the sun is too bright for the human eye to physically see the brightest star midday. The same goes for the night when a full moon is out. Because now you have a massive white spotlight that could ruin stargazing if you were trying to find planets or stars. And the only way to view these celestial bodies is to just not look at the moon and try to keep everything as dark as possible, as well as your eyes, because it will take some time for your eyes to properly adjust to the night sky and see things you never thought you could. As mentioned earlier, the moon experiences phases during the day and night. Each phase is special because it changes how bright the moon will appear. Let's run them down. To start the cycle, the moon will begin in a phase called new moon, which basically means zero sunlight is reflecting on the only visible part of the moon, therefore the moon will be completely invisible. During the day this means that the moon indefinitely is out but it is so close to the sun that we can't see it. Then we have the waxing phases. And the waxing phase is the cycle that slowly fills the moon with light. Waxing crescent, first quarter, and waxing gibbous phases fill the moon from the right side to the left. Next, we have the full moon, which is when the moon will appear only at night relative to the sun's position. So the sun and the moon are opposite sides of the earth, and we can only see either the sun or the fully lit moon. Then finally we have the waning phases which start to remove the light from the surface and to the left side. Waning gibbous, third quarter, and waning crescent phases go from the right to left side removing light. These phases show movement in our solar system and how light works on a massive reflective surface. And that's it for the pilot episode. Hopefully you learned something about the moon today. It is really huge making these types of videos to teach people about something. This series will be continued with more information and value. More moon-related videos are to release in the next coming weeks. Thanks for watching, goodbye.